Hi, this is Elisa from the Wicomico County Libraries. I'm here to go over a program for illustrating a fairy tale. And we're going to do a few basic art techniques and illustration techniques in this program. It's going to be set up in 4 easy steps, and I'm going to do a demonstration as I walk you through it. Now, the first step is picking out a story and setting up. And for my demonstration, I've chosen this story, Jubbal's Wish. It's a story about a bullfrog, and I specifically chose a page in the book that was my favorite one. And so what I liked about this one was that it lends itself well to my personal style. I like to do things that are simple and very poster-like and graphic, and this image isn't like that at all. So part of what I want to show you today is how to get inspired by a storybook, but be able to illustrate it in your own style. Now I'm going to turn things around the other way, so you'll just have to imagine what it looks like upside down, and I'll do my best to turn them around so that you can see them. Now, before I get started with working off of my my sketch for the beginning, I want to give you an overview of materials. So obviously you need your book. You want to have a nice quality paper for your final drawing. I like to always recommend a heavyweight, smooth archival paper, even if you don't think the drawing is going to be great. It's always good to put them on quality paper. You'll also find, actually, I'm going to do a little bit of painting, and the paper will absorb the paint and not curl up nicely on this type of paper. And then in addition to that, you don't need to use paint. I actually have another version I will show you later that I did in colored pencil. But if you are using paint, these paint pads are great for mixing colors. I have just some poster paint in a few different colors and cups over here, some brushes, paper towels, water. It's all water soluble, simple paint. You could use acrylic, gouache, which is an opaque water-based paint, or watercolors. They all work very nicely. For doing my sketching, I'm going to be using some graphite. I have some colored pencils that I am going to use in this one, even though it's mostly going to be painting. The frog right here is kind of a small little detail, but he's very cute and he's kind of the star of the show. So I want to make sure that I get those details in. So I'm going to do him in colored pencil, but then because the rest of the image is just so much large areas, I thought it would be faster and easier to do it in paint. So I'm going to do it that way. And one of the great things about this technique, we're going to do some tracing and some transferring, is that you can just repeat the same concept in different styles and see what you like, or even do a series. So it's a really great way to become comfortable with different techniques, to experiment, and to explore your ideas. So having said that, I left out 2 other things. So for the pen outlines, I like to use a nice marker that doesn't stink too much, or a fountain pen. For a nice thick line, I'm going to use this marker. And then for the transferring, a roller ball or ballpoint works very nicely. And I know I just went through a whole lot of materials, but you could do this just in pencil and still have a great time with it. And I'll speak to those opportunities as we go along. So I'm going to get started with the drawing and sketching, which is part 2 to the steps. And I'm going to move my paper to the side because I'm actually going to just be using trace paper for this step. right here I have some tracing paper that I cut down from a larger size. You can always, if you have smaller tracing paper, you can always just put one side by side. Now, rather than taping, since this is a book, I don't want to mess it up, I'm going to use some binder clips just to hold the trace paper in place. And I'm just going to trace this image, and bear in mind that my goal with this drawing, this illustration, is to do it in my own style. So I'm going to be tracing with an inspiration towards making a poster and an image that is a little bit more stylized. But I still want to capture the emotions, because I think this wizard character is very friendly. He's kind of got, like, he feels like a nice uncle, or he almost reminds me of Santa Claus. So I want to capture his kindness, and I want to capture the look in the face of the bullfrog is just adorable. So I want to make sure I capture this. And I'm noticing that my graphite, while it's wonderful for doing these types of contour drawings, it's getting a little dull. So when I do the detail for the bullfrog, I'm going to switch to my mechanical pencil. And this is just something that you can kind of, see what you like the best. Everybody has different feelings about every different medium, and they're all very fun to work with. And don't be afraid just to work with ballpoint pen on a napkin or whatever you have around. You'd be amazed at how many different things you can use as drawing implements. I apologize if I keep on putting my head in your view. I'll try to keep my head back a little bit. And so I'm really doing my best to capture the details that I love, but to also make it more simplified. And once again, that's just the style that I prefer, and because I want to make a poster out of this. Now, I was talking about the personalities of the characters, and I just remembered that I did not take the time to read to you the words that I want to use in the poster. So I'm just going to take a moment and lift the tracing paper up. This is one thing that's great. If you're not sure, you can't see it, when you have the binder clips on it, it keeps it in place. And so I can just lift it up, and I'm just going to read this to you. A great hand reached down and scooped Jubal high up into the air. Do you need a wish? A wizard asked the startled bullfrog. So I just think that that's adorable, and that's going to go on my poster. So I'm almost done. I'm just really trying to capture this gorgeous flowing hair that this magical wizard has. And I also really love his star and moon pattern robe that he's wearing, and his pointy hat. Now, I'm also making it my own, so I'm not using the text on the left-hand side, and I'm not using the graphic that's over here. I'm just using this part. And because I want to kind of mirror the writing, I'm just going to use a ruler and draw some lines just where the words are. There we go. So now I have my trace. I'm going to take the binder clips off. These will come in handy later. And to give you an idea, I like to have an extra sheet of white paper around because it really helps you get an idea of what your new drawing looks like. So this is part 1 to the sketching. I'm going to keep my book up in front of me because I always want to be referring to my book. But I'm going to prepare for the second step, which is I'm going to transfer my trace onto a new piece of paper. And I can see that this paper is a little bit smaller than the book, and so I'm going to sort of make some decisions here about my composition. I'm actually going to turn it around so I can look at it from my point of view. And it's a little bit more of a square composition. I'm going to align it at the bottom because his arms kind of get cut off down here. And I actually love the wizard pointy hat, so I'm just going to give him some more space to have a big pointy hat. I'm laughing at myself. And I just happen to have some washi tape here. You can use artist tape or masking tape to affix these. Normally I would, if it lined up perfectly with the page, I would use just my binder clips, but because I'm trying to do a new thing with my composition, I'm just going to use a little bit of this washi tape, which by the way is from Japan. It's got little cuts on it. It's really cute. Love an excuse to use a little bit of washi tape. And what's great about it is it's not going to tear the paper. So now we have our tracing paper in place. I've got a little piece of carbon paper here that's from a recycled triplicate form. You can also get these in sheets or rolls from an art supply store. And if you don't want to use the carbon or paper, or you can't find it, you can use a light table, or you can just draw by eye. That's really good practice for hand-eye coordination and for your drawing skills. But because I think that this is a technique that's really helpful if you're interested in doing storytelling and character development, and also for developing drawings in series, I want to show you this as an option, just how it works. And so I'm going to put the carbon paper with the carbon facing down on my new piece of paper. I'm going to use a roller ball pen, or a ballpoint to go over my pencil drawing. And as I do this, I take an opportunity to make decisions about what I want my final drawing to be like. So maybe if I made a mistake in my tracing, I just ignore that. And I need to be mindful that my carbon paper is only it's a small sheet of carbon paper, so I'm just moving it along as I go. And I'm really trying to really capture these organic curvilinear lines in his hair and his beard. He's really just such a sweet looking wizard. And I wonder what kind of wish the bullfrog is going to get. I'm really curious. I want to read the rest of the book now. I actually chose this book because today's program is on illustrating fairy tale, and fairy tales are one type of story, and I wanted to make sure that I was representing the theme correctly. Now, summer reading for this year is Imagine Your Story, and it covers all kinds of different storytelling, but fairy tales is one type, and usually one of the characteristics of a fairy tale is it has personified animals and it has magical characters. So I think the wizard represents that magical character, and the bullfrog represents the personified animal who, you know, speaks and has personality, is a character in the story. And I made a decision in the last version of this, which I will show you, to simplify the basket. The book has a blanket over, or a cloth over the basket, and I wanted to simplify it just as a part of simplifying the overall drawing. And I'm actually not going to trace the type here, but I'm going to keep it as a reference point. So now I'm going to remove the tracing paper. And the carbon paper. And we have our transferred drawing over onto the new piece of paper. Now I'm going to use this as a guide for my next step, which is the line drawing. Now if you're not using pen and ink, colored pencil, or paint, you can do instead of the line drawing the way I'm going to do it, you can just do it as a more finished pencil sketch. And I'm actually going to complete my pencil sketch because we didn't really, I want to get that pointy hat in there. So I'm going to try to kind of decide. I want to make sure you can tell it's pointy, but not go too crazy with it. And you can see I made some mistakes there, so I'm just going to take an eraser and clean that up a little bit. And because I'm going over it with paint, I'm not too worried about getting it perfect. Now I also want to note for you that I'm planning on using this pattern in his robe and his hat, but I didn't trace it because I want to make it a little bit more abstract, almost like it's a blanket. And so I'm just gonna, you know, visually refer to my inspiration in the storybook as I fill that part out. Now, as I get ready to do the line, I'm going to think about how I want to use my mediums. And so in this version, I think I'm actually going to do the paint first and then the line. And the reason for that is that this is a water-based paint. I'm going to do a wash and let it dry. While it's drying, I'll show you the other colored pencil drawing that I did. And then once it's dry, I can go over it with my line, and I like the clean look that that's going to have. So having said that, I've decided that his robe is going to be a light purple. His beard area is white. And then there's just like a light kind of pinkish texture to his face and his hands. Before I start with the paint though, I am going to go ahead and color in Jubal the frog. And so when I do Jubal here, I'm going to start with his little basket. And color him in a few different colors, just to give it some extra texture and to suggest a little bit of depth. So You know, maybe you can put an area that might be in shadow, in a darker green. You know, there may be different clothes that our personified frog is wearing. Or different parts of his body are just in different complexions, just like, you know, how people are, or, you know, any other animal. They can be different shades of a color, but it still gets across, I think, even though he's very small, that he's a frog. And with this one, I am trying to stay in the lines because the colored pencils are not going to be overdrawn as easily as the color wash. So I want to make sure that I'm not obscuring any important details with my colored pencils. And these little things with materials, you'll learn over time just through exploring with different things. It's just kind of fun, I think, to try different things. I just noticed that I missed a detail here that I want to keep, which is his bangs here. Just a little teeny extra thing there. And so as a next step, I'm going to move the book out of the way. I'm still going to keep it in my sight, but it's going to be off camera because I don't want to risk getting any paint on it. Just going to tear off a piece of paint pad. And just to keep my table clean, I've got some paper plates here. I'm actually going to use these instead of this paint pad, actually. And I'm going to start with my purple. And I'm sort of thinking, I don't have any yellow. I'm being creative while we're doing the demo. Just coming up with new ideas, which is the fun part of doing art. So I liked the idea of him having these stars and moon shapes, and I want to do that underneath the wash. I'm going to do it in two different colors of yellow. And I'm really trying to make this more graphic than it is in the book that I'm being inspired by. And when you see my other colored pencil drawing, you'll see that I'm kind of developing on the same idea, but just doing it in a little different way. Hello and welcome back. During the break, I finished coloring in, and I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to set it aside while it's drying. Hopefully it'll dry enough by the time I get done showing you this other drawing that I can do the line art over top of it. Although I actually think it's quite nice just the way it is. If I had more colors, I would have colored in the frog in paint just so that it's consistent. Now this is a drawing that I did earlier today, and it uses the same page in the storybook. I'll turn it upside down so that you can see it. Uses the same page in the storybook and the same transfer technique. The main difference is that it's all colored pencil, and you see that I did the contour final drawings in pen around the pencil that I wanted to keep. Then I filled it in with my selected colored pencil colors. I did a mix of purples in the purple area, a mix of grays in the background. And then I just used my neatest handwriting to write the inscription that I wanted to go along with my poster. And you can see I'm using the same star and moon pattern that is inspired from the storybook page as well. And I really like how the frog turned out on this one. So I'm going to move the storybook out of the way now. Once again, this is Juball's Wishes if you ever want to check it out. And I'm going to use my earlier drawing as a reference and inspiration to see what do I want to do differently with this one. Now the paint is still a little bit wet, so I'm going to do some tests. I'm going to look and see maybe there's some areas where I can use my colored pencil or my my marker. And look at that, even though it's wet, it's actually keeping pretty well. That's one of the benefits of having a nicer type of paper. The heavyweight paper really absorbs nicely and keeps it from wrinkling. I also added some binder clips on the edges just because it was wrinkling up a little bit. When you're using a lot of watercolor paper is often a good idea, and this is just a heavy-duty drawing paper, so it's not quite as good with taking the water. But for graphic drawings, I really do prefer the smooth texture of a heavyweight drawing paper. I think you can get watercolor paper in smooth too, but this is just what happened to be around, and it works just great, especially if you're just, you know, experimenting, etc. Now, because I've got some little pools of wetness, I'm going to actually do my outlines first, just because I don't want to ruin my marker with paint. And every once in a while it does get a little waterlogged, so that's what I'm doing over here on my, I have some craft paper down to protect the desk, which is a good idea if you're doing this at your kitchen table or if you have a nice fancy computer desk. Now I'm going to let this dry, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to do the lettering. And I think I'm gonna, even though when I wrote out this lettering, it doesn't fit the same way that it is in the book, but I actually like it this way because of the shape of it. So I'm gonna keep this. And we'll just treat this like this is a, you know, another variation. One of the things that's great about this technique of drawing and redrawing is you get to explore different styles, and it's a really good tool for developing an idea. And I'm just going to do this in the neatest print that I can muster. Okay, and just to finish up, I'm going to add a few little extra marks on the interior here with my outline marker. And I'm actually, yeah, I guess I want to do his hair too. And because the paint hasn't dried, I'm just going on the inside of where the purple paint that's still wet is. And I think this is actually working pretty well because it gives you the kind of multi-dimensional feeling. So it's kind of a happy accident. And finally, once you're done, you've got your illustrated storybook page, fairy tale page. And if you want to, you can take your own character and do a practice page of what would your character look like in a page in his or her story. Now, thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a safe and good day or evening.